Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Yarnflakes podcast. My name is Audrey. I am a knitwear designer from the southwest of France, and this is a podcast where I share some of my knitting projects. Hi, thank you so much for joining me for this new episode. I hope you're doing very well. This is a questionable frame. I am moving houses. I'm lucky that I am only moving like 15 minutes by foot away, so I'm progressively moving things, waiting for the internet to be installed at the new house, because we cannot work. Two people home working without the internet, not working. So this means that for this episode, I'm afraid the background is gonna be quite weird and messy, but that's how it is. I am also blessed with terrible lighting today, as the sun refused to come out, but that's how it is. I do have quite a few nice projects that are very cocoon-like to compensate colourful and squishy knits that I hope you will enjoy. You can find timestamps to all the different sections of the podcast in the description down below. So if you want to skip anything or find a project in particular, feel free to look at that. I also put links to everything that I talk about, my social media, my patterns for sale, and my Patreon page if you would like to support the channel and my design work, most importantly. I haven't slept a lot. Obviously, so if I'm a bit rambly and messy, not that I'm not usually, but you know, that's how it is. I am going to start with what I'm wearing, which is a new design which I just published on Ravelry and Payhip, and it is the Maika Cardigan, and it is something with a lot of options, a lot of things to show you. So I'm trying to get a little bit. Yes, I'm wearing jog pants because when you're moving, styling is not a question. I was already this close to bringing those to the new house and be left without them as I wanted to film this podcast, and I managed to not do that mistake, so that's already great. So we'll deal with the jog pants. They're super comfy, and yes, so I'm not selling you my jog pants. Maika, which is a cardigan, a big cozy cardigan with lots of options. So it's a top-down cardigan featuring an all-over texture which uses a tuck stitch. It's a short 3-stitch repeat basically, which is kind of like ribbing. You have 2 pearls and 1 tuck stitch. If you have never done tuck stitches or brioche, don't worry, because it's actually the people who are familiar with brioche that tend to have issues, because this is not brioche. Brioche is a type of tuck stitches. Basically, you use tuck stitch all over and you get brioche. This is just 1 tuck stitch. In the pattern, you have a video showing you how to knit the texture, explaining you how to read your knitting. The instructions are also charted and written, and yeah, beginners have been knitting this texture without issues, and it's also the texture that was in the Eidola shawl, which is a pattern that I released last year, and it was one of the textures of that shawl, and I really enjoyed knitting it, and I thought it would make a fun cardigan. So this is a drop shoulder cozy cardigan. You knit it top down. You do 3x1 twisted ribbing finishing, straight sleeves in the round, gathered at the cuffs, and then you do the neckband. So you have several options. You basically have the option to make this a regular length or a long cardigan, which is the sample that I have here. A longer mid-thigh length cardigan. You can make, as you can see, the texture just in 1 color, or you can make it with stripes of 3 colors, which adds a little tweed effect. If I can put the two one next to the other, basically when you're doing the color changes in this version, you're doing the color change on the pearl sides. So you have the blips of the previous color, which adds that fun little color blips. You can choose different ease. So I wanted to show as well that it was possible to just adapt the recommended ease to whatever you like. I'm wearing size 2 here, which gives me about 15 centimeter ease, which is more a regular indoor cardigan. And so I'm gonna wear the other one. This is the fashion show podcast. And this version I made, oh god, the cable that is connected, yeah, stop moving. The cable that is connecting the lamp has been hit. And this version, I think is size 4, which gives me about 35 centimeter ease. And it's more of a blanket, cozy, coat-like cardigan. And we can't really see, but yeah, it reaches basically mid-thigh. You can make any length you want, really. And the last option, which you may see, is the neckband. So you can choose to do a picked up neckband. So at the end of the cardigan, you pick up stitches all around and you knit the neckband this way, horizontally. But as this would be quite painful to do on a super long cardigan, you can also do a sewn neckband. So basically this is knit separately. You have the ribbing here vertically and you seam it to the side. I recommend seaming it as you go. Basically you knit a little bit, you seam it, you knit it a little bit, you seam it, until you go all around. I'm really happy with this finishing. I think it's much neater than what I was thinking it would be. And yeah, I don't personally mind seaming. I enjoy doing it. I'm not especially good at it though, so pretty happy with how this turned out. And yes, so here is Maika, which is super cozy. I have used 2 different yarns for this. This one is Dererum Natura Robinson, which is a new yarn from the brand. Basically, it's worsted weight, Arles Merino and cotton. So it's a really interesting blend because it's the woolen spun yarn with cotton. So it is kind of similar to their Gilead yarn, except the cotton makes it softer and lighter. So even though it's still a big cardigan, this remains quite light, and as you can see, it's a bit airy. It doesn't bloom as much as the Gilead. It's a bit more drapey, and it's really nice and light to wear. And yeah, this version I made in Katia Concept Cotton Merino, which is a yarn that I first saw at a yarn shop a few years ago, and I really loved it. I was really intrigued by it because it's 70% actually cotton, 30% merino. So it's a blown type of yarn, basically. It has an I-cord of cotton at the center, and around you have the little fiber of merino. This means that one, it's heathered, and the colors are more or less heathered. Obviously the darker colors, here you can see the black is more heathered, whereas the gray is not so heathered. And this is how the wrong side of the fabric looks. You can see the stripes a little bit more. This makes it easy to count your rows, by the way. And you can see the colors. The green is just a little bit heathered, etc. And usually the blown yarn like this, they're more, they're usually nylon based to have that fluffy effect in industrial type of yarns. So I was really intrigued with this one being cotton and merino only, and I really like it. It's super soft, super squishy. It makes a really lovely fabric. I think for this type of yarn, it has a pretty good texture definition. And yeah, it's a good affordable substitute for the unspun yarns. You know, if you find that the lovely woolly rusticity of Nutiden and Plotulopi is not for you, this is extremely affordable. It's like it's not extremely affordable, but it's 5.90 euros per ball. You have a DK meterage because you have 105 meters to 50 grams, but because it's airy, it really blooms a lot. So you knit it at a worsted Aran weight gauge. I knitted this on 4.5mm needles, and the gauge is 14 stitches. So basically, you have more meters per ball, and you don't need to buy as many balls of yarn, even if you're gonna make a big garment. So I really, really like it. It has the slight fluffy effect. It has a fun color range as well. They have lots of pretty beige, which are really nice. And yeah, what can I say? Yes, neckband wise, you might be wondering, why is there no option to knit the neckband at the same time as the cardigan? It's because I don't really like that method. When you do this, when you knit a cardigan like top down and you knit the neckband at the same time, you need to do short rows. Because if you don't, basically the elasticity row-wise, the row gauge of the whatever ribbing, or even if you're doing double stockinette on the neckband, compared to the fabric that you have on your cardigan, say regular stockinette, the row gauge is not the same. And so if you knit normally, then eventually the neckband just gets too loose. For it to be tensed enough, you need to do short rows, so you need to not knit the neckband every row. And the problem is, with this texture, not possible. First of all, you would have to fiddle with the stripes to have the only one color. And on top of that, this texture has a very particular stitch to row ratio. There's 14 stitches per 10 centimeter and over 30 rows. So there's more than twice the rows compared to the stitches. And this didn't really work math-wise to be able to do short rows on the neckband and have it sit properly. It would have been too restrictive, too complicated. People would have needed to have the exact row gauge, both on this and on the ribbing, and all of this for a result that is, in my opinion, not ideal. It would have made the pattern more complicated and, yeah, for not a guaranteed result anyway. And it would have been a shame because, as is, we have two neckband options which are accessible and work. And the pattern is fairly easy to knit, like I said. There's a video for the tuck stitch motif, so even if you've never knit tuck stitches, not a problem. There is guidelines on how to pick up the stitches around the sleeve as well, because of this particular stitch to row ratio, you need to pick up very few stitches here, actually. This knits up fairly quickly. I've knitted both in 1 month while doing all the things at the same time, because it's kind of, yeah, potato cheapy, as they say. And this is a really soft and squishy fabric. And yeah, I like it. I'm going to be using this as a coat, kinda, because it's not so cold here yet. It is raining, finally, but it's not too cold, so this works well as a outdoors garment too. So that's it. As you can see, there's a slight V shaping here at the front, and yeah, all the options all the possibilities. You can check my testers versions to get an idea of how it would look in various yarns as well. And yeah, I really hope you enjoy Maika, which is the cozy knit of the season from me. And if you do, there is 15% off for the release on Ravelry with the code Maika. So M-A-A-M-A, no, that was very French. M-A-I-K-A. A lot of your letters are A-A-A-A-A, so it's a bit difficult. But yeah. That's it for this cardigan. And I'm going to move on to another pattern that I wanted to show you, and transitioning with the same yarn, I have re-released this. This is the Brocéliande headband, which was published in the Pom Pom magazine last year, the autumn issue of Pom Pom. And so yeah, it was quite funny because I saw this yarn in 2019, I think, and I had made plans to make this design, and then the Pom Pom team accepted my design idea for this headband, and they selected this yarn. And this is like a more red pinkish colorway. So Brocéliande is a headband that is knitted flat, so you can adjust the length to any head circumference you like. You can do it for children as well. You can also adapt the width easily. The pattern includes instructions on how many stitches to cast on if you want a finer one. And you basically knit it however long you want in this waffle rib motif, which is a texture that I really like. I've been using it quite a lot. I've used it in one of my very first garment designs. I've used it since then in a couple other designs, and yeah, slip stitches and knit purl squares basically. And once you have reached the length that you need, you seam it, so it's sewn basically in a certain way to make the knot. There is a video tutorial in the pattern showing you how to make the knot, basically. It's the same knot that I used on my griotte headband for reference. And yes, so you are absolutely not centered. So you are knitting this in DK worsted weight yarn. You need just one ball if you're using this yarn, but you need under 100 meters for any adult size head, so even less for children. And yeah, it looks silly with the hair down, but so it's a super quick knit if you've been wanting to make headbands for gifts, if you have people who like headbands around you. And yeah, that's how it is. So it's now available on its own as a single pattern on Ravelry and Payhip and Lovecrafts as well. So I really do like this yarn. It's very squishy, and like I said, they have lots of really nice beigey color, and I kind of want to make a basic long cardigan like this, but maybe with a different texture, because I have one commercially made long beige cardigan that I wear a lot, and I would like to have a hand knit version, and I'm considering using this yarn for it. So yes, that's it for the patterns that I wanted to share with you. And now I made a gnome. So I'm moving houses and I'm taking some of my stuff with me. I had one gnome, store-bought gnome. It was kind of like the only Christmas decor I had when I was a student 10 years ago. And when I was studying and working in Paris, and I had that one gnome as a Christmas decor. And when I went back near my parents' place, I brought my gnome with me. And my mom loves the gnome, and she took it for herself, basically. So now that I'm moving houses, I'm taking back my gnome, and she is mortified. So I thought I would knit her a gnome. And yeah, so there are lots of gnome patterns. There are some from Susan Anderson, but I chose the one from Sarah Skira, I don't know how to pronounce. It's Imagine Landscapes. And they have a lot of patterns. There's one that is really beautiful with the twisted cables pattern. I really love this one, but I wasn't in the mood to make so many little twisty cables on DP ends at the moment. So I opted for the Choose Your Own Gnome Adventure. It's not centered. Choose Your Own Gnome Adventure pattern, because this one is very complete. It has different gauges for fingering, worsted, bouquet, and each of those gauges has 2 sizes. So, of course, if you want the exact measurement, you need to check your gauge, and I didn't. I didn't measure my gauge for this, but I did want some sort of to be on the proper path for a regular size gnome using fingering weight, and not a lot of them use fingering weight, but this pattern did. So that's the leftovers that I had. This is alpaca linen yarn from Les Petites Potions. This is Knitting for Olive Merino, and this is Arwetta by Filcolana. And I wanted a regular size gnome, because in this pattern, if you look at it, there's a massive one, which is kind of hilarious, and I almost considered doing this, but cumbersome gifts, not funny. Well, funny for the one who does them, not funny for the recipient, right? But yeah, so this is why I chose this pattern, because it has the most options and it fitted the fingering weight kind of this size that I wanted to use. I do think it's smaller than what it should be, but that's the exact size that I wanted, so it's fine. You start with the hat and you have lots of options, which is fun with this pattern. You can do plain stockinette, you can do pearl stripes, you can do collar stripes. There's a little slip stitch motif as well, which is fun. Same for the body, you can do stripes, you can do different beards. So basically you knit the hat and you pick up stitches under here to knit the body, you increase it. It has some hips, right? You knit the body, you stuff it, so you have to weigh it down. So if you only use light stuffing, it doesn't stay put. So I had some leftover polyester stuffing things from years ago that I got when I made a few amigurumi dolls, and I had the stuffing still left, so I used this, and at the bottom I used some garden little rocks basically to weigh it down. Then you do decreases to make the flat bottom. You do the beard, you sew the beard. I did a mistake because I sewed the beard right at the top, and so then when I went to put the nose, I couldn't quite put it right, and the brim of the hat doesn't sit so well on it. I think my nose is too big. And it's not centered. Like I said, I don't mind seaming, making little things, but I'm not really hyper meticulous with it. So there's that. You do the arms, so that's the one thing that there are I-cords, but because you do the hands and a little stripe of the hat color, then you have to put the ends through the arm, and they're kind of showing through, but it has tattoos, okay? That's how it is. But yeah, here's the gnome. It was fun. I might make some for me as well, if one day I'm motivated enough to do the... all the weighted thing just went on his back, that's the problem. All the little rocks are on the back instead of being spread all over his body. Ugh. Yeah, I can relate, but please. Alright. And if I ever have the motivation to do the twisted cable ones, maybe I might, because it looks really beautiful. But for now, this one is a really simple pattern with lots of options, and you can make a ton of different ones. So, well, now you're skewed. Look at that. There it is. I have a work in progress that I also wanted to share with you, and I'm almost done with it, but I wanted to show it to you now because, oh god, because it's a pattern that is going to be released soon, and it's the free pattern for this year. So I like to release a free pattern every year because it's to thank people for supporting my work, and I think it's important to have free patterns available so that people can check how designers write their instructions. Basically, we don't all work the same, and so I think it's good that people have a way to see how I write my patterns so that they can see if it will suit them, and if it doesn't, so that they can better gauge if it's right that they maybe embark on a more difficult project. So it's a cowl. It's a Colourwork cowl, and it will be released in the middle of December, so around the 15th of December. If everything is fine, if I have internet in my new house, yeah, I will try to do this. But I wanted to let you know in advance, because if not, I would have told you a bit late. But yeah, you cast on stitches provisionally. I used the Turkish cast on, and you have this Colourwork motif. And I'm gonna make it a Mobius infinity cowl, so I'm gonna twist it before seaming it. But you don't have to do this, you can also just seam it like this. And it's gonna be a one loop, kind of like this, basically, cowl. And I am using this really fun Colourwork motif, which is small and easy to memorize, and I really like it. The thing is, I find it a bit too busy for a garment or something. I don't know, when I look at it, it looks a bit too, I don't know, it's a bit too much, too stripy perhaps, I don't know. But I think it looks really fun as an accessory. And yes, so what I did color-wise was that I divided the length of the cowl in 3, and I'm using different sets of colors. So I started with this blue and this green. I know there's like some sort of fashion rule not to put blue and green together, but I do genuinely like blue and green together, so there's that. Why is it so bright out of nowhere? Then I use this cream and cinnamon brown, and I just started this one, which is less contrasty, a bit more flashy. It's pink and coral. I just thought they all looked fun together. And yeah, so once I'm going to finish this section, I'm going to graft everything together, and yes, hopefully have some picture appropriate weather before the middle of the month so that I can release it. And yeah, like I said, it will be free. I will announce it obviously on Instagram. You will see it on Ravelry and Payhip. But yeah, that is it. I am knitting it with Filcolana Pernilla, of course, which is one of my favorite yarn. So you would need a sport weight or a heavy fingering weight. If you're using a fingering weight that is a bit finer, make sure that it's a Colourwork friendly one so that it blooms well. You might get a smaller cowl if you change the gauge, that's fine. And you can knit it to the length that you want. Basically, it's just the width that might be different, which you can adjust as well. In the pattern, I will write up how many repeats to add if you want a different width as well. But for this version, it's sport weight. I'm using 3.5mm needles, and I really like Colourwork in Pernilla. It's, yeah, I really, really do. I keep rambling about this yarn. I'm sure you're sick of it. But yeah, that's what I've been knitting on. It's quite fun, and staying there and mindless with a short repeat, but still interesting because it changes slightly every time, the little pointy things. So yeah, that's it for this episode. That's all I wanted to share with you. I do want to talk a little bit about my Patreon page, because I have a Patreon page where you can support me and my work. Basically, you get access to behind the scenes information, and you can get 1 or 2 patterns every month, depending on the level of support that you choose. And every month I publish a video on Patreon. So these videos, I record them in French, but I subtitle them in English myself. And they're different topics. Sometimes they're yarn reviews, knitting tutorials, technical discussions, theoretical things, and sometimes they're just behind the scenes design. And for December, I made a vlog about the creation of Maika. So from starting this sample, thinking I would just do this one sample, to adding another version, different neckband options, everything, as well as the test knitting process, etc. So yeah, this behind the scenes vlogs is kind of when I share knit bits of managing testers, how I approach test knits, discussions about pattern writing, details and things. So yeah, it's quite a long vlog. It's like 1 hour and 40 something. But this is this month's Patreon video. And when you join Patreon, so the videos are available from €5 per month, VAT free, plus VAT basically. And you have access to all the other videos that have already been published. So since 2019, there are quite a lot of topics for you to binge watch if you would like in 1 month. And yeah, thank you so much for everyone who is on Patreon. I really appreciate your support. This is basically where I get the possibility to keep designing full-time, and I am really super grateful for that. I did want to mention, because I know people have been horribly worried, because it's like really the only reason you're on Patreon is that you like hearing the dogs snore. So yeah, kind of like 90% of my Patreon videos, in the background you can hear my dog snoring, and people seem to really love this. I know this is the only reason you're on Patreon. And since I'm moving and I'm not taking the dogs with me because they're not my dogs, don't worry, because I have already a lot of videos planned in advance. So the dogs will be snoring on Patreon until 2024, really. So yeah, I just wanted to reassure people that the dog snoring will still happen whenever I release a Patreon video. But yeah, so yeah, like I said, I'm in the process of moving. I hope to have internet by next week. It's a bit difficult. And yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to make a vlogmas, because you're seeing this on the first day of December, I think, or just the day before. I don't know yet. I don't have time. I don't want mostly to do it as organized and regularly as I did the previous couple years. So I don't know, but I might try to just do, to film some bits and pieces here, and whenever I have enough to make a little vlog, I will post it, but it will not be as timed. I used to do them every 2 days of December. I was releasing a little vlog for the end of the year, but kind of like the pose vlogs that I've been doing. But now I cannot, and I'm also very tired, so I want to take some time off in December. But I might do just a little bit more pose vlogs than usually, basically, and use that as vlogmas, you know. You'll see. I'll see if I can do it. It depends how well the move goes with the last moments. And yeah, I will see you hopefully in a new house in January. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish you a very happy end of 2022, and I will see you next time. Bye!